There's no secret sauce to sales, right? If you've all been in the role for as long as you've been, you know that all the techniques and the dealing with objections and knowing your scripts, that stuff's important, right? But there's some fundamentals to sales, which is, am I getting up every day and doing outreach? Am I making those phone calls? Am I meeting people, right? Am I populating my list? Am I creating a new list? All the shitty stuff we need to do, right? If we can do that religiously, if we can do that through a discipline, right, then everything else becomes easy. The most successful people in sales are people that are regimented in their routine. They make so many phone calls each day, they answer emails in a certain way, they outreach in a certain way, they have a rhythm to what they do in their sales role every week, right? And someone that's new, it's fresh for you, right? You've been here for a year and a half, so you're fresh in your routine. Right? Some of us have been doing this for a little longer and we start to, pick up bad habits and start to not do what we should. We talk a lot about sales activity, which is when sales are good and, things are happening, we're executing and we're navigating those sales relationships a little more effectively. But sales have a cycle to them, and then what starts to happen is as we've delivered, we need to get back to selling again. But the challenge is we don't actually start to increase our activity when sales start to come down. And what do I mean by activity? More phone calls, more knocking on doors, more chasing people, more getting together with people, more trying to go to people and clients that we wouldn't really know, right? Getting back to some of the most fundamental, basic, easy, hardcore chasing people down. My job requires me to get up and sort of multitask, always jumping around, and I find that's the biggest thing that disrupts me in my sales role, is not getting into enough of a rhythm for long enough. Right? So if I'm sending emails or I'm making phone calls, right, what usually happens is I'll have to do that for an hour, jump up and get into some coaching, go to a room, do a delivery, come back, follow up on those emails. But when I have quieter weeks and I could sit in my office and just tuck, those are the greatest weeks. In fact, I had that week last week. Last week for me was a week of outreach. Monday, I opened up my inbox and I had probably about 27 responses from all those emails. Probably pounded out maybe 200 of them, right? But 27, and they were all sort of good sort of responses, which is going to allow us to move forward. The most important thing we can do is prepare for these interactions. That is the difference between success and not success, is how you plan to go in and engage in these meetings and have these conversations, right? Think about how much you plan in your life, but the one thing you don't plan for is important conversations, right? You plan your trip to Cuba, right? You plan dates, excursions, who you're going with, how you're getting there, how you're going to feel. You researched, you looked at options, right? You put a deposit, you paid, you booked transportation, you thought about everything. But you got to go see a client next week. What do? Hey, bud, what's going on? It's been a while. How you doing? And not just better at the ones that we have scheduled, but the ones that are impromptu and informal. Everything we do in today's world comes from a true connection. I just had a call yesterday with this executive coach, leadership consultant guy. Anyway, I'm chatting with him, and he said, look, I know we're technically competitors, but how do you feel about getting together for a coffee? I said, coffee? Absolutely not. And there was a pause. I said, however, beer or wine? You got me. And I was like, how about we do that? And he was like, I would love that. And I was like, look, I will get together, I will share, I will talk, I will tell you about what I'm doing, I will involve, I will participate. Because at the end of the day, the only person I really compete with is myself. There are other companies that do what I do, but they don't do what I do. There are other companies that offer what you offer, but they don't have that history, they don't have that dynamic, they don't have that connection. Everything we do in today's world, successfully, particularly in sales, comes from a true connection. True connection. And we are living in a world of disconnection. In all of these social platforms, in all of the noise, we have never been more disconnected in our entire lives. Yet, it is one of the most primal, primitive needs we have as human beings. Community. We're not. We've got all these communities online. Look, I got 1,000 friends, but that's not a community. These are like transactional relationships online. Our most primitive thing that we need is community because it provides security for us. You know what what tribalism is, like being in a tribe. We all used to live in a tribe, right? And the reason we lived in the tribe, because it provided warmth and shelter and food, right? I survived, I lived. You know what happened if you were punished in the tribe back then? What was the punishment? Banishment, not execution, banishment. Because banishment was for sure was death. You would go out in the cold with nothing, by yourself. Now, as we've progressed through times and we're in the modern world, right? Do you know what the new tribe is? Work. Our biggest community right now is work. We as salespeople are the most resistant to changing the way we approach our sales roles. Also purchase? Absolutely. Right? And this isn't to knock you, and this is to actually acknowledge the fact that you've been doing it for quite some time, you've been doing it successfully. Right? The conversation was, what do we want to try to get out of this? So here's number 2. We want to be able to communicate more effectively with each other. So if we work this internal stuff with each other, we will really strengthen as a culture and as a team. Right? If we can strengthen as a team, some of these outside things become easier to address. Number 3, we want to understand that all of this stuff is useless, new opportunity, if we cannot nurture and manage these existing relationships and increase the amounts of business that we're doing with them. I think we want to increase, obviously, some market share. I think we want to improve our brand. I think that's probably one of the biggest outcomes that actually he didn't actually talk about, but I think is important, which is improving, or increasing would be a better word, your company brand, but your individual brand. Right? How do you become really known as that person, that expert, that supplier, that vendor? How do you pop up first? How do we increase referrals? Now, none of this was a list given. I just said activity. And I'm saying, okay, well, I think this is what activity means to me, which is not replacing what we're doing, but just layering in another addition. Right? I think what we should do as well, maybe, and is it you that's running the sales meetings? Like the sales group, right? Maybe we should spend some time and talk about what we could do in our sales meeting to make sure that we're adding these things in. Why don't we use? I hope what today is also bringing is some reinforcement that you're doing it well, that this isn't about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but this is about leveling up individually, intrapersonally, and emotionally, so we can attack this role way more effectively. I'm Greg Witz. Thanks so much for coming and checking out the video. If you like that video, you're going to love the next one, so I'd highly suggest that you click this video over here. And don't forget to subscribe and share.